Welcome to Historical Secrets, 1948, The Birth of a Nation, the Death of a Homeland. What if I told you that the most complicated conflict of our time, the war between Israel and Palestine, began not with tanks or rockets, but with a dream? A dream of return. A dream of freedom. A dream that, for one people, became the birth of a nation, and for another, the death of a homeland. This is the story of 1948, the year the world changed forever, the year one nation rose from the ashes of tragedy, and another was scattered into exile. To understand 1948, we must travel back decades earlier, to a time when the world was still ruled by empires. For nearly 400 years, the Ottoman Empire governed the land known as Palestine, a place of rolling hills, olive groves, and holy cities. Here, Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived side by side, not without tension, but without the walls that would later divide them. Then came the late 1800s. Across Europe, Jews faced waves of persecution, pogroms, discrimination, and centuries of exile. Out of this pain emerged a new movement, Zionism. It wasn't just a political idea, it was a spiritual calling, the belief that the Jewish people must return to their ancient homeland, Zion, and build a state of their own. In 1897, at the First Zionist Congress in Switzerland, Theodor Herzl declared, "We want to establish a home for the Jewish people in Palestine." But at that time, Palestine was already home to another people, Arab Palestinians, who had farmed its soil and built its cities for generations. To them, Zionism looked less like a homecoming and more like a takeover. The Great War and the British Mandate. Then came World War I. The Ottoman Empire collapsed and the British took control of Palestine. In 1917, Britain made a historic promise, the Balfour Declaration, supporting the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. But there was a catch. Britain had also promised independence to the Arab peoples for helping fight the Ottomans. Two promises, one land, endless confusion. Over the next 2 decades, Jewish immigration to Palestine increased dramatically. Entire kibbutzim, farming communities, appeared across the land. For Jews fleeing Europe's anti-Semitism, this was hope reborn, but for Palestinians, it was the slow erosion of their homeland. Tensions exploded, riots in 1929, an Arab revolt in 1936. The British, stuck in the middle, tried to keep control, but the land was boiling. The Holocaust and the world's guilt. Then came the darkest chapter in human history, the Holocaust. 6 million Jews murdered by Nazi Germany, families wiped out, synagogues burned, Europe's conscience shattered. When the war ended in 1945, Jewish survivors had nowhere to go. They were homeless in every sense of the word, alive, but without a country. The world now faced a moral question. How could humanity atone for such horror? For many Western powers, the answer was clear. The Jews must finally have their homeland. And so, the push for a Jewish state in Palestine grew stronger than ever. But no one asked the Palestinians, the people already living there, what they thought of giving away their land as compensation for Europe's sins. The UN Partition Plan. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a solution. Partition Palestine into 2 states, one Jewish, one Arab. Jerusalem would become an international city, belonging to no one and everyone. On paper, it seemed fair. But the map told another story. The proposed Jewish state covered 55% of the land, even though Jews made up only 1/3 of the population. The Arab majority, 2/3 of the people, were offered the smaller portion. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan, reluctantly, but with hope. The Arab leaders rejected it, seeing it as a theft of their birthright. And so, before the new states could even be born, the land erupted into civil war. Neighbors turned against neighbors, villages burned, Militias formed on both sides. The countdown to 1948 had begun. Act 5, May 14, 1948. The birth of Israel. On May 14, 1948, as the British prepared to leave, David Ben-Gurion, the leader of the Jewish community, stood before a crowd in Tel Aviv and declared, "We hereby proclaim the establishment of the State of V." Cheers erupted. After nearly 2,000 years of exile, persecution, and wandering, the Jewish people had a home again. The dream of Zion had become reality. But even as Israelis celebrated, Palestinians were fleeing for their lives. The very next day, 5 Arab nations, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, invaded the new state. The Arab-Israeli War had begun. The Arab armies were larger, but the Israelis were fighting for survival. Village by village, they pushed back, and when the smoke cleared, Israel had not only survived, it had expanded. The new state now controlled 78% of historic Palestine. For Israel, it was a miracle. For Palestinians, it was the Nakba, the catastrophe. The Nakba, the death of a homeland. Between 700,000 and 800,000 Palestinians were forced to flee their homes, expelled or escaping the fighting. Entire villages were emptied. Families carried keys to houses they would never see again. In refugee camps from Lebanon to Gaza, the old men still tell their grandchildren, "See this key? This is our home in Jaffa. One day we'll return." But that return never came. Israel called it victory. Palestinians called it tragedy. The same event remembered in 2 languages, told in 2 truths. The new refugees settled in makeshift camps, waiting for the world to remember them. But history moved on. Act 7, Wars, Walls, and Broken Promises. In the decades that followed, more wars came. The Six-Day War of 1967, Israel captured East Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza, and the Golan Heights. For Palestinians, it was the loss of what remained of their homeland. For Israel, it was security and survival. Then came the Yom Kippur War of 1973, the peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan, and the Oslo Accords of the 1990s, when it finally seemed that peace was possible. But each promise faded. Each agreement collapsed under the weight of mistrust. The Israeli settlements grew. The Gaza Strip fell under blockade. And generation after generation grew up knowing nothing but checkpoints, sirens, and shattered glass. Act 8. The present day and the endless. Question today, Israel stands as one of the most powerful nations in the region, a democracy born from survival. And yet, for millions of Palestinians, life remains a struggle under occupation and siege. 2 peoples, 1 land, each believing history is on their side. And at the heart of it all, 1948, the year that gave one nation its freedom and another its exile. The story of Israel and Palestine is not just about borders. It's about belonging. It's about memory. It's about 2 peoples chasing the same promise from God, across the same land. Perhaps one day the birth of a nation will no longer mean the death of a homeland. Until then, 1948 lives on.